Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly fascinating perspective on family, duty, and destiny, the karma of family, and the purpose of childlessness. We're looking at this intriguing piece of Eastern philosophy drawn from a Jungbub lecture, and honestly, it challenges basically everything we typically assume about having a family. If you've ever found yourself wondering about the deeper, maybe even cosmic reasons behind why families look the way they do, and specifically the purpose behind childlessness, you are absolutely in the right place. Let's get into it. Okay, let's dive into this. Why are some people destined to be childless? Traditionally, society frames childlessness as this big void, right? Or something to be super anxious about. We tend to view it as something missing. But the source material introduces a radical shift here. It presents a very neutral, almost mathematical idea. It suggests that having no children simply means you have no direct karmic worries, or what the original text translates to as having no tails. Basically, you aren't dragging around a specific, targeted, energetic burden. It's not a punishment at all, it's an exemption.
To really understand this, we have to look at the mechanics of connection. The core premise of this philosophy is that the parent-child relationship isn't just biological, and it certainly isn't random. It's fundamentally built on mutual karmic debt. Think of it like a giant spiritual ledger. According to the text, a parent and a child come together in this lifetime specifically because there are karmic accounts to settle between them. They're bound by this invisible historical tie that just absolutely requires resolution.
The order of operations here is actually fascinating. Let's look at the karmic debt flow. Step 1, a child arrives due to that mutual debt we just talked about. But look at step 2. This is absolutely critical. The parent must pay off their debt to the child first. They are universally obligated to provide, care, and sacrifice to settle their end of the ledger. Only after the parent's debt is fully paid can step 3 happen, which is where the child pays their debt back to the parent. The universe demands the parent goes first. In fact, the speaker notes that if a parent fails to pay their debt, there's no way the child will ever repay theirs. So following that exact logic, we arrive at this concept: no debt, no child. The speaker explains that if a person simply doesn't hold this specific type of karmic debt, the universe just doesn't give them a child. It really is that simple. They're completely freed from those direct, intimate, day-to-day worries of raising a biological child because there's literally no spiritual ledger that needs balancing in that specific domestic way. The slate is already totally clean in that department. Now, what's really interesting is who actually worries about this the most. The speaker observes a very specific demographic divide. It's the highly educated, the doctors, lawyers, judges, intellectuals, who often carry the heaviest anxiety and stress about being childless. The text points out that manual laborers, folks doing physically demanding work, are rarely given this childless fate, and they rarely worry about it in the same existential way. The universe, according to this lecture, distributes this fate super deliberately to a specific group. But why single out the intellectuals for this childless fate? Well, the rationale provided is profound. These highly educated individuals have acquired their vast knowledge by, and the text puts this pretty starkly, consuming the blood and sweat of the people. Society's resources, its infrastructure, and the collective labor of the masses allowed them to study and achieve their high status. Because of that, their primary karmic debt isn't to a single biological child. It's a massive debt to society itself. They are meant to act as public figures. So what happens if they ignore this massive debt? And this brilliantly illustrates the core tension the speaker warns against. On one hand, you have an intellectual focusing solely on their own biological child. On the other, dedicating that knowledge and energy to society. If a highly educated person pours all the vast societal resources they've absorbed into just their own bloodline, the text argues it's a super dangerous misallocation of energy. It can literally lead to the ruin of the household. They're called by the universe to serve the greater good, not just their own family tree. Because of this specific societal calling, the source imparts a stern warning against forced attachment. The speaker advises against obsessing over having biological children if it's just not happening naturally. Furthermore, they strongly warn against treating adoption like, quote, picking out an item just to fill a personal emotional void. Think about it. If the universe cleared your domestic ledger so you could serve society, forcibly trying to acquire a child just to satisfy your own ego is ultimately going to lead to things going completely wrong. This brings us to a foundational concept in this philosophy, one that requires a bit of a perspective shift. The Korean word is Jungbub, which generally translates to study or lesson. But in this context, it's not about reading textbooks.
It's a spiritual challenge or circumstance presented to an individual, meant for deep personal growth rather than a burden to be consumed by. The speaker frames deeply sensitive life challenges, like childlessness, or even having a child with a severe disability, as these profound, tailor-made spiritual lessons.
It's entirely about reframing hardship. The philosophy states that if a family has a child with a disability, for instance, obsessing only over fixing the disability or just surviving the day-to-day without attempting to understand the deeper spiritual lesson, the Jungbub, is an absolute tragedy. If you just consume your life in sorrow or forced effort without internal growth, the text argues you actually waste your own life and you ultimately fail the child too. You have to look for the deeper spiritual meaning behind the hardship. So the crucial point is this: what is the true meaning behind not having a child? It is definitely not a void to be filled with anxiety or forced solutions. Instead, childlessness is actually an invitation. It's this sort of cosmic prompt to stop looking inward at your own biological legacy and start looking outward to discover your broader societal role. The universe is essentially telling you that your work is out there, in the world. Which leads us to the ultimate narrative climax of this source material: all children in this society are my children. This is the philosophical resolution, right here. A childless person's energy, freed from the direct karmic debt of biological parenting, must be redirected to universal parenting. They are literally meant to be a parent to society itself, embracing every young person out there as their own spiritual responsibility. So how does this work in everyday reality? It's the practice of equal care. The practical application of this philosophy is rigorously treating a stranger's child with the exact same care, attention, and respect as you would your own flesh and blood. You don't have to literally bring every child into your home, obviously, but when a child crosses your path, your heart and your actions must reflect universal care, not a biological bias. It's just an incredibly expansive way to live. The speaker gives a very stark anecdote to illustrate the consequence of failing this test of equal care. Imagine you're at the store. A stranger's child is crying and in need, but you ignore them, walking right past them just to buy something nice for your own child. The philosophy holds that this exact kind of selfishness results in precise karmic consequences. The speaker boldly claims that if you can't bring yourself to provide for the crying child in front of you, you really shouldn't provide for your own in that moment either. It's all about maintaining absolute spiritual equality. Which leaves us with one final, incredibly powerful question. How would society change if we viewed every child as our own, if we shifted from biological hoarding to universal parenting? It's a massive paradigm shift. Whether you take it as literal karmic law or simply a beautiful metaphorical guide for social responsibility, it completely reshapes how we view our purpose in the community. It challenges us to expand our definition of family. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today, and I will leave you to ponder that thought.